Hello friends! Welcome back to another episode of our I Do Work Here Lady series, where people who actually work at places are mistaken for not belonging. I've got 6 stories for you today. The first story is about a guy who's mistaken for a tourist and decides to have fun with it. The second story involves a person who looks too young to be working at a university. The third story features someone yelling at the owner of a company. I hope you stay for all these stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled, Stop, You Can't Leave the Tour, Never Mind, You Work Here. In the late 1990s, I was a young college student working as a summer intern at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where Mission Control is located. I worked in a building that housed numerous offices and labs for programmers and electrical engineers. At the front, there was a large industrial space with a huge vacuum chamber in the center, and I was stationed in a closet at the back of the building that had been converted into an office. Each day, I would go out to lunch, navigating through the maze of the building. One day, early in my internship, I noticed a group of people taking pictures of the vacuum chamber and heading out of the building. I merged into the crowd and exited with them. They continued straight, but I turned left to head to the cafeteria. About 50 feet later, I heard someone shouting, "Come back! You can't leave the tour! You could be charged with trespassing!" I turned around and saw a young woman yelling at me. Then I realized all the people were boarding a tour tram. She noticed my badge and said, "Never mind, I didn't know you worked here. Sorry." After lunch, I spoke to my boss, who explained that Space Center Houston, a nearby museum, ran tours, and our building was one of the stops. She thought it was funny that they mistook me for a tourist trying to escape. For the next few weeks, I delayed leaving for lunch if a tour group was exiting the building to avoid being confused for a tourist and getting yelled at. But later, I started deliberately merging into tour groups and then running toward the cafeteria. I'd hear a shout, explain I was an employee, and show my badge. After about a week of this, all the tour guides recognized me and stopped getting alarmed. However, I could still hear the tourists making a commotion when they saw me running, then laughing about it afterward, which made it worthwhile. This story is titled, Yes, I'm Old Enough to Drive, and Yes, I Work Here. Here's a little background. I'm a little person with a mild form of hypopituitary dwarfism, which means I'm 4 feet 9 inches tall and weigh 90 pounds. For about 5 years, I worked at a university after finishing my undergraduate degree while attending grad school. I worked with hearing-impaired students, assisting them in the classroom. I also did transcribing and live closed captioning for their lectures so they could take notes. It was a pretty great job if you enjoy learning, and we were the only university offering this kind of service for hearing-impaired students. The one drawback was that I had to lug around a lot of equipment, including a laptop and microphone. To make this easier, I used handicap parking so I could park close to my students' classes on campus. One day the weather was nasty, sleety and cold, but I had snagged a prime parking spot right in the middle of campus, behind the building where my student had class. I had about 45 minutes before the class started, so I opened my laptop to review a transcript and correct any mistakes before sending it to the student. While I was working in my car, I heard an annoyed knock on my window. I looked up to see a grumpy old man, let's call him Gom. My window on that side didn't roll down, so I cracked my door and asked, "Can I help you?" He replied, "Are you a student?" I said, "I am, but I also work here. Do you need something?" At this point, I thought he might be lost, as the campus could be confusing, and after nearly 9 years there, I was used to giving directions. He responded, "I don't think you're a student. Let me see your ID." I replied, "I don't think so. There's no reason for you to see that. If you don't need anything, I have to get ready for work." He said, "You can't park here if you're not a student. You need to move." I told him, "I work here and I'm also a student. You can see my parking pass in the window and my handicap tag." I tried to close the door, but he wouldn't move his hand, which was on top of the door. I was getting nervous because, while he was old, he was still bigger than me, and I'm tiny. The old man insisted again. "If you're a student, show me your ID." I said, "Not happening. If you want to walk to the other side, you can see my pass in the window to park. Otherwise, report me if you don't believe me, but I have work to do." I jerked my door closed, making him lose his grip, and locked it. He stood there for a minute or two, glaring at me, then stomped back to his car and left. About 15 minutes later, just before I headed to class with my student, my cell phone rang. It was a parking officer I was friends with. The grumpy old man had actually called and reported a little girl in a handicapped parking spot who didn't look old enough to drive, let alone be a student, claiming she worked there. I was in my mid-20s at the time. We shared a good laugh, and she said she knew it was me as soon as he made the report. She asked if I was okay and if he was still bothering me. Luckily, he hadn't returned, so I said I was fine but explained how he acted. She said they had his information and would keep an eye out in case he harassed anyone else. This story is titled, "Dude, you just yelled at the owner and he took it." This just happened a few days ago. I work in a steel shop that fabricates structural steel for buildings. This story didn't happen to me but to one of my coworkers, and I found it hilarious. We recently hired a new guy whom I'll call Jack. He's a 62-year-old man who's clearly seen some rough times. We joke that years of hard living have taken a toll on him. Trades guys listening to this story can probably relate. The funny thing is, he's never met the owner of the company. The owner is 80 years old and only comes in once every few months to check on things, as the company has been handed down to his two sons, who now run the business. Our shop is fairly large, with about 40 employees spread across 50,000 square feet of space. Everyone's familiar with the owner since most have been around for a long time. In our shop, safety equipment is mandatory. To be on the shop floor, you must wear a hard hat, high-visibility vest, safety goggles, hearing protection, and steel-toed boots. Standard when working around dangerous equipment. A little backstory about Jack: he takes safety very seriously. He was injured at a previous job when a pipe rolled over his foot, shattering his ankle. He was later compensated over $100,000 through the workers' union. At work, we consider him the new guy, but he's stricter than our safety officer. If Jack catches you coming out of the bathroom without your safety glasses, he'll rush over and give you an earful. If you forget your high-visibility vest after lunch, he'll yell from halfway across the shop to put one on. We don't blame him. Safety is critical in our line of work, and he's just doing his part. He's a bit annoying, but he means well. Now, on to the story. One day, we're all working, and guess who walks through the office doors into the main shop area? Yup, the owner himself. The funny thing about our owner is that he's an old-school guy who doesn't care about rules. He's an 80-year-old giant Polish man who loves wearing sandals, t-shirts, and shorts while strolling into his castle. We don't say anything because, hey, it's his company. He can do whatever he wants. He could ride a pony into the shop for all we care, as long as the paychecks keep coming so we can keep the lights on and our families fed. Jack hasn't seen him yet, and the owner is making his rounds, greeting everyone and asking how they're doing. He's a really nice guy. About 20 minutes pass, and he said hi to nearly everyone. Then Jack looks up from what he's doing and spots the owner in a bright yellow Hawaiian t-shirt, khaki shorts, and sandals. What came next was the best thing that's happened in my entire 6 years at the company. Just a reminder, Jack is 62, and at that age, you can develop quite a mouth. He also has no idea what the owner looks like. Out of nowhere, I see him pointing at the owner from about 20 feet away and yelling, "Hey, you! Who let you in the shop? Where's your safety gear?" Jack then practically sprints to confront the owner. Everyone around has a huge grin on their faces. They know what's coming. Jack unleashes, saying, "Hey, who let you in this shop? You know you need safety equipment to be on the floor. You're dressed like you're about to catch a flight to Jamaica. You need to get out of the shop now before I escort you out." Uh-oh, did he just threaten to throw the owner out of his own company? Our owner doesn't take kindly to people yelling in his face, which is exactly what Jack did. The owner replied, "When did you start here? I've never seen you." Jack shot back, "Don't try to change the subject. This is about you. I've never seen you here. You don't work at this company, so why are you even here? If you're someone's family, you need to go back to the office area. You can't be here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the shop now." We were all expecting the owner to say, "Do you know who I am? I'm your boss. I own this company," and put Jack in his place. But he didn't. He stood there silently. Another coworker shouted, "He doesn't work for the company, but he's the founder and owner." You might expect this to be like other "I do work here" lady stories, where the person gets embarrassed and backs down after realizing their mistake. Nope, this is not that kind of story. Jack, the hardened 62-year-old, stood his ground and shocked us all. He let loose on the owner, saying, "I don't care if you're a guy off the street or the owner of this company. Anybody on this floor needs proper safety gear. It's mandatory for us, and it should be mandatory for you, especially because you're the owner. You need to set an example for your team. I need to make sure you go home with 10 toes, 10 fingers, and 2 eyeballs, exactly the way you came. You're no different from us." The owner looked at all of us, then at Jack, and said in broken English, "Listen to this guy. He's a good guy." Then he walked back into the office without another word. Jack's intense, but he won over the entire company that day. It turns out the owner really likes him too. He's a great fit for our company, that wild guy. This next story is titled, When the Boss Looks Like a Random. I witnessed this happen a little while back and I thought it would be funny to share. I've been working at this office for about 5 years now and have built a pretty good rapport with everyone. It's a medium-sized company with about 100 employees spread between 3 locations, and we get to interact with our executives once in a while. They're super friendly people and take the time to get to know you. Last summer, we had a new hire in the office for the sales team. We'll call him Tim for storytelling purposes. He was younger, maybe in his early 20s, and was brought on by the sales manager, Rick, who was his uncle. Though his uncle was the manager, Tim was eager to learn and prove himself, always wanting to be more confident and sure of himself. So, he ended up portraying himself in a certain way, which came off a little arrogant, especially when it came to meeting customers. But he was working on that. When he was hired, it just so happened that many of the employees were on summer vacations with their families. So Tim didn't fully get introduced to everyone because most people were away. Tim also helped the sales team cover a lot of the sales calls, such as walk-ins, phone calls, emails, and so on. Now, our office was in an industrial area. So it's happened in the past that someone off the street has waltzed in and stolen laptops or computers in broad daylight. We've also had some sketchy-looking individuals come in to use the bathroom and then destroy it. One day, Tim and I were in the showroom, taking a look at new products and familiarizing ourselves with them. I went around the corner to look at the computer to print out some info when I heard the front doors open, and Tim greeted whoever entered. I took a peek and saw the back of an older gentleman who was wearing a worn-down polo, khaki pants, a shabby fishing hat, and some sneakers. I didn't think much of it and went about my business on the computer. After a while, I heard Tim say aloud, "You can't go back there, sir. That's for employees only." The old man tried to go through our employee doors. Good on Tim for stopping him. Then I heard, "Ha, you? No, you don't," followed by some mumbling response that I couldn't hear, to which Tim responded, "Are you trying to be clever? I know everyone here. You're just trying to steal stuff, aren't you?" Uh-oh, that didn't sound like a friendly conversation anymore. So, I poked my head out, still only able to see the old man's back, and Tim pointing at the door, saying, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now." I got a little closer and heard the old man reply, "Young man, I'm the CEO of this company. Get your hands off me." I felt my stomach knot up a little as I recognized the voice. I quickly ran over there to witness Tim holding the old man by the elbow and forcibly leading him to the door. I shouted at him to calm down, as it was totally the company's CEO. His name's David, a gentleman in his late 60s. I'll never forget the look on Tim's face as he realized his absolute mistake and how quickly he let go of David's arm and started to profusely apologize. His face beat red. It turns out that David had just returned from his trip and needed to grab a date book from his office or something. On his way home from the cabin, he decided to drop by the office smelling like fish and all, so he totally looked like a questionable individual in a professional office. Poor Tim, thinking the guy was pulling his leg, was just trying to make sure nothing was being stolen. After that, we never let it go, always making jokes about Tim escorting out the CEO, showing our ideas to him to prove our identity, and stuff like that. Oh, crazy Tim. Guys, I don't understand why people feel the need to grab others to forcibly pull them places. If I don't know you, don't touch me. Is that just me, or do a majority of you guys feel that way as well? This next story is titled, I'm Not a Kid, I Work Here. Right after I graduated high school, I took a job at a mall clothing store. It's a popular chain, and the dress code was pretty casual. The only way to identify a staff member was by a bright yellow lanyard that we wore around our necks with a big name tag on it. We got all types of people in here, young and old, and most days were drama-free. One day I was putting clothes back on the racks, and there was a middle-aged lady looking at the clearance section, which was against the wall. It had clothes near the bottom and clothes near the top. The top was usually a little too high for some people to reach, and typically, customers would ask for assistance. I glanced over from my task and saw that this lady was having trouble. She was trying to take off a few items from the higher rack. So, I walked over and said, "Here, let me help," and grabbed the item she was aiming for. She thanked me and kept looking through. I saw later on that she needed help again, but she went and waved at one of my coworkers instead. I took the initiative and helped the lady, as I was pretty close to her. She seemed flustered at me and thanked me again. This time she said, "Oh, that's very kind of you. I don't want to trouble you." I said, "It's no trouble," and then went back to my task. A few moments passed, and I saw her contemplating between a men's blue jacket and a men's black jacket. So, I popped over in my usual friendly self and said, "Are you looking to buy a jacket as a gift?" She hesitated but answered, Yes, I am." I then asked, "Well, who are you buying for? Maybe I can help." The lady did one of those awkward smiles and said, "It's for my nephew. I guess you can help." I then went into the spiel about the pros and cons of the two different jackets, why this one had an extra pocket on the inside or the other had a spot where you can thread your earbuds through, and so on. The lady was polite, but I could tell she was much more reserved the whole time. She didn't ask any questions, but did a lot of, "Oh, that's nice and that's interesting" kind of responses. She then said, "Maybe I'll buy this blue one for him. He can wear it anywhere." And I said, "Sounds great. Would you like me to bring it up to the counter for you?" Again, she gave me that awkward smile and said, "No, that's all right. I'm just going to keep looking for a bit." I smiled back and said, "Sure, let me know if I can help out any more." I went back to sorting through the clothes and putting things away. Maybe a few minutes later, I saw the lady at the front till, having her items scanned and bagged. I heard my coworker ask, "Did anyone help you out today?" To my surprise, the lady answered, "No, not today." So, our store doesn't do commission or anything, but they like to keep track if employees make efforts with customers for customer service purposes. So, I kind of hopped over to the front and made myself friendly and said, "Hopefully, your nephew likes that jacket." The lady said, "I'm sure he will. I must say, you're very enthusiastic about this stuff here. You should think about getting a sales job here." I blanked out at that, as did my coworker, not sure what the customer meant. I said, "I'm sorry, I thought it was very kind of you to offer to help me and all, but maybe let the people who work here do that." I responded, "But I work here." The lady blinked at me with a vacant look on her face and said, "Well, it doesn't look like it. I've noticed the employees here wear a bright yellow lanyard with a name tag on it." My coworker then let out a little giggle and said, "Ma'am, she sure does work here." She shook her head and said, "No, there's no way. She doesn't look like an employee." My coworker then said, "Oh, I can see why she thinks you're not an employee," and gestured at my chest. Oh my gosh, I had just finished my break and totally forgot to put my lanyard back on this whole time. I looked like a regular customer, annoying this lady by talking to her. I apologized profusely and then ran out to the back and grabbed my lanyard. I watched that poor lady stare at my coworker, then stare at me, then at my coworker's lanyard, then at my lanyard. Then her eyes went wide and her face went bright red with embarrassment. She said, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were just some kid who wouldn't stop bothering me. I was about to tell you to leave me alone, but I didn't want to be rude." It turns out that's why she seemed so hesitant around me. She thought I was some young 15-year-old girl who was getting into her business for some weird reason. The lady kept apologizing all the way out of the store, even though I told her it was all right. After that, I made sure to always put my lanyard back on after my breaks. This last story is titled, "I'm Not a Student, I'm a Student Teacher." This is potentially one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me. A few years ago, I was working on getting my Bachelor's of Education degree to become a teacher. This meant that I had to be a student teacher for a bit to gain some field experience. During my advanced field experience, I was placed at a local high school, and I worked with a mentor who taught both English and art classes. Now, I get mistaken for being a lot younger than I am. I'm about 5'2", so I'm pretty short, and I dress very casually, like jeans and a t-shirt with a zip-up hoodie. It's nothing too young, but I don't dress like I'm in a professional office. It's a high school I'm working at. During my early weeks with this mentor teacher, I had a pretty good time getting to know the school, the routines, and learning what things I would be responsible for. It was pretty simple and straightforward. I've been forever thankful that my mentor was so amazing and personable. One week in a new semester, I was in between classes and having a break at one of the bench tables. The table was located in a part of the school where it had low foot traffic, but it's close to an open stairwell that was next to the cosmetology room. I'm sitting there, reading my book and snacking on an apple, when a student sits down at the table across from me. My guess was that he was a grade 11 student, one of the preppy kids, judging by his outfit and hair. "Morning," he called. I smiled, said, "Good morning," back and continued reading. He said, "Good book? Would you recommend?" I said, "Yeah, it is. If you like thrillers and mystery, definitely give it a read." I remember showing him the front cover so he could see the title clearly. I can't remember what book I was reading. It was too long ago. The boy continued and said, "How's your day going?" "It's good, thanks. How's yours?" He did this little head nod that was supposed to be suave, I think, and he said, "Much better now." He started to compliment me, my hair, the color of my bracelets, my bag. I didn't think much of it until he started asking weird questions like, "What class do you have later?" I responded, "I have English class after lunch." He asked, "What are you doing for lunch?" I paused for a moment, kind of confused by his question, and said, "I'll be eating lunch. What about after school?" After school, I'll be going home." He then asked, "How about we hang out at the mall together later?" It took me way too long to process what was happening, and I stared at him for what felt like minutes, totally confused by what was going on, and said, Are you asking me out?" The boy smiled at me, this poor boy, and he said, "Yeah, what do you say?" When it finally hit me, which felt like a light bulb going off in my head, I laughed out loud and said, "Oh my gosh, no, I'm not a student. I work here. I'm a student teacher. I'm like 10 years older than you." I felt so horrible that I didn't catch on earlier, but this kid was so embarrassed, he just got up and took off. He didn't even answer me or anything, he just booked it. I think I even called out, "I'm sorry," as he was power walking away, not entirely sure if he even heard me. So, the worst part of this was not for me but for the boy. It turns out he was on a family vacation for a couple of weeks when I started student teaching, and he was in my English class later that afternoon. When he saw me up front with his teacher, the kid hid behind his binder every day, and for the rest of the time I was at school. If I saw him in the hallway or anything, he'd turn on his heel, totally embarrassed, and would never make eye contact with me. Good old high school. I had this one student teacher who, I'm pretty sure, was there for attention more than anything. So, she had this crazy tattoo of a tree on her back, and I remember a few times where she was in front of the class teaching and guys would yell, "Show us your tattoo!" And she would, freaking heck, lift up her shirt in the middle of teaching to expose her whole backside so the kids could look at it. I don't remember anything she taught, by the way. I just remember that tree tattoo that she showed too many times to kids. Like, me and my friends were just sitting there thinking, should she be lifting up her shirt in class to show us her tattoo? Like, is this something teachers should be doing? I mean, the tree tattoo was pretty cool, but, you know, she seemed like she wanted attention more than anything. Below are my opinions on each of the stories. Story 1. Stop. You can't leave the tour. Never mind, you work here. I found this story hilarious and relatable, especially for anyone who's ever blended into a crowd by accident. The image of a young intern at NASA's Johnson Space Center unintentionally joining a tour group and getting scolded by a tour guide is pure comedy gold. I love how you turned it into a playful game, deliberately merging with tour groups just to mess with the guides and entertain the tourists. It's a lighthearted prank that didn't hurt anyone and probably gave those tourists a fun story to tell. The fact that you worked in a converted closet office and navigated a maze-like building with a giant vacuum chamber just adds to the quirky charm of the setting. It's a great reminder that even in a high-stakes place like NASA, there's room for a bit of mischief and laughter. Story 2. Yes, I'm old enough to drive, and yes, I work here. This one hit me in the feels, both for its humor and the frustration you must have felt. As someone who's been underestimated before, I can imagine how annoying it was to deal with that grumpy old man questioning your right to be in a handicapped parking spot. His audacity to demand your ID and physically hold your car door is infuriating. Talk about overstepping boundaries. I admire how you stood your ground despite being nervous, and the fact that he reported you as a little girl who didn't look old enough to drive is both ridiculous and laughable. The parking officer's response was perfect, turning it into a shared joke. Your job helping hearing-impaired students sounds incredibly meaningful, and it's clear you handled the situation with grace and strength despite the unfair assumptions. Story 3, dude. You just yelled at the owner and he took it. Oh man, this story is an absolute gem. Jack's no-nonsense attitude and his fearless rant at the owner in his Hawaiian t-shirt and sandals had me in stitches. The fact that he didn't back down even after learning the guy was the company owner is the kind of bold energy I respect. What makes it even better is the owner's reaction, just walking away with a quiet nod of approval. It shows how much he valued Jack's commitment to safety, even if it came with a side of yelling. The image of a 62-year-old tradesman lecturing an 80-year-old owner about 10 toes, 10 fingers, and 2 eyeballs is unforgettable. This story is a perfect mix of humor and heart, showing how standing up for what's right can earn respect in unexpected ways. Story 4. When the boss looks like a random, this one had me cringing and laughing at the same time. Poor Tim, trying to prove himself as a new hire, only to accidentally manhandle the CEO because he looked like a scruffy fisherman. I can totally see how David's casual post-vacation vibe could be mistaken for a random intruder in an industrial office setting. Tim's confidence turning into beet-red embarrassment is such a classic I messed up moment. I love that the team turned it into an ongoing joke. Those kinds of stories become office legends. Your point about not grabbing people you don't know resonates with me. It's such an unnecessary escalation. This story is a great reminder to double-check before assuming someone's out of place, especially when they might just be the boss in disguise. Story 5. I'm not a kid, I work here. This story is so endearing. I can totally picture the awkwardness of that lady thinking you were just a random kid pestering her, when you were actually being a super helpful employee. Forgetting your lanyard is such an honest mistake, and her reaction, going from flustered to mortified when she realized you worked there, is priceless. I love how you kept your cool and stayed friendly despite her dismissal, and the fact that she didn't even mention your help at the counter until you popped up is such a human moment. It's a great example of how appearances can lead to funny misunderstandings, and your commitment to customer service shines through. I bet you never forgot that lanyard again. Story 6. I'm not a student, I'm a student teacher. This one had me laughing out loud. The idea of a high school student mistaking you for a peer and trying to ask you out is both adorable and mortifying. I feel so bad for that poor kid, hiding behind his binder in your English class after realizing you were his student teacher. Your casual style and youthful appearance totally set the stage for this mix-up, and I love how you handled it with kindness, even calling out an apology as he bolted. The contrast with the other student teacher showing off her tree tattoo is wild. Talk about different approaches to teaching. This story captures the awkward hilarity of high school perfectly, and it's a great reminder that sometimes looking young can lead to some unforgettable moments. And that, my friends, wraps up another episode of our IDoWorkHereLady. I want to thank the lovely subscribers for the story submissions today because they were simply amazing stories. I hope you enjoyed these 6 stories today. If you like them, let me know by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to hit that like button, and if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you in the next one.